Thank you everyone for joining us today. A little late. I appreciate your patience for the webinar. Today we'll be talking about the top 5 K-12 cybersecurity tools and strategies that are often overlooked, but really are very powerful and often very cost-effective. My name is Daniel Eickhoff. I'm a K-12 cybersecurity specialist here at Securus 360, and we are a cybersecurity company 100% focused on the education space, primarily on K-12 school districts, helping them with their cybersecurity operations and their cybersecurity protection. I have Jeff with me today, doing much of the presentation.
My name is Jeff Teitelbaum. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Securus 360.
All right, and before we get started, let's take a quick look at some of the challenges that the K-12 space is looking at. It's the #1 target for ransomware attacks is K-12, and it's only getting worse. DA is saying it's the #1 target. Here's another example. There's tons of different studies and surveys out there, and they all agree. And we created this map here tracking cybersecurity attacks against school districts, specifically from coast to coast. At least these are the ones that we have information on that we're tracking. You can click on the website. It's an interactive map. You can click these little icons. These circles are bubbles where multiple incidents are combined. You can click those to expand. You get news reports and details on the different incidents. But what we're seeing is that the frequency and the complexity, the sophistication of these attacks are constantly increasing day to day. They're getting harder and more difficult to detect, more difficult to defend against. Even large districts like LA Unified a year ago, with all their resources and all their solutions they have in place, got breached. And the hackers are after the children's data, right? And school districts have a lot of that sensitive information, which makes them prime targets. And once that information gets out, it's devastating for these families. This is an example in the DC area, large district, Prince George's County Public Schools. The data of 100,000 people, students and staff and parents, got leaked, including full individuals' names, financial account information, social security number. Huge fallout in the community. Minneapolis Public Schools, a good example. Medusa was responsible for this one, and MPS, to their credit, did not pay the $1 million ransom demand, but unfortunately, promptly Medusa leaked all that information and sold it on the dark web. So there's a couple different reasons why the number of attacks against school districts has gone up so much recently. And #1 is due to the school districts' limited budgets, unfortunately, right? We all know how that goes. Smaller IT teams, certainly compared to the private sector. Often school districts don't have a dedicated cybersecurity staff. Maybe the larger districts have, but medium, smaller districts don't. So they are what the hackers call soft targets. We already talked about that they are attractive targets because of all the valuable information. all the student data that the bad guys are after. But another thing that we're seeing, another key reason is that there's been a shift in the way that ransomware gangs are operating. And before, old model, you had a ransomware operator, a ransomware gang, and of course it was a group of people, but they could only attack so many victims at any given time. And then a year or two ago, they started restructuring as ransomware as a service operators. So and other ransomware gangs shut down and sold the technology to new emerging RAS groups. And one example actually is Hive. Hive ransomware. They got under pressure from law enforcement, and so they shut down. And Hunters International bought them out. So Hunters International took over the Hive technology and now is operating it as a RAS group. But now we have these ransomware as a service operators or groups, and the key here is that they are leveraging a number of affiliates each, and these are basically independent ransomware contractors. And each RAS group has 10, 20, 50, 100 affiliates, and each of them is attacking their own group of victims. So this means that now each RAS group can target hundreds of school districts simultaneously. And they do this in a more random and opportunistic approach, basically casting a white net and seeing who they can catch. Other groups like Vice Society, for example, they are targeting school districts specifically. And that's because of their data-rich environment, susceptible to pressure because of the nature of the data, often vulnerable, like we talked about. As a result, any school district is now much more likely to be attacked than in the past. And districts are unfortunately finding out the hard way that only being smaller or being lower profile than that shiny city district, it doesn't mean that they won't be attacked. So this is a huge game changer in the industry. We did our last webinar actually was on that topic. So if you want to view that, it's available on our website. No registration or anything required for that. You can just play it. And Medusa, so to just highlight that, that whole shotgun approach, casting a white net, just before Christmas, last Christmas, in a couple of days, Medusa took down 3 school districts in just a couple of days. And interestingly, the sizes of these districts were 3 schools, very small, 9 schools, 3, 9, and 33 schools. So really across the board. And this is a copy of the actual ransomware ransom note. And I redacted the name of the district here. But we were actually we actually were talking to these guys a couple of months before this attack and the breach, and we were discussing on a high level our services, what we could do for them, how we could help them be more secure, specifically in the areas of MXDR detection, response, remediation, and basically they said, thank you, but no thanks. We're fine. So they felt sufficiently protected, which unfortunately, in retrospect, we know it was a miscalculation. And I don't know if they underestimated the threat or if they overestimated their defense, the level of their protection. But unfortunately, they were breached then subsequently. So the question is, how can school districts protect themselves? And there's many different technologies and tools and strategies. Today, we'll be looking at the top 5 that are often overlooked and are still extremely powerful and often affordable. So with that, Jeff, why don't you take it away?
All right. Thanks, Daniel, and thanks to everyone for taking some time out of your day to join our presentation. Before we dive into the overlooked security measures, we first want to talk about some of the more obvious ones here. And that's going to be, you should have a robust antivirus, but keep in mind that only protects you against known threats, but it's still absolutely essential. Additionally, you hopefully have full coverage EDR, so full coverage on all the systems possible, or at least the critical ones. And we do recommend having it managed. That way that task is taken off of you. And that's, even though that's still a good solution just with those two, that's still not enough. There's still tons of events happening on your system every single day. And that's why a MXDR or MDR solution is absolutely recommended to threat hunt and get some additional info and coverage and make sure that those blind spots are being covered. Similarly, with network switch monitoring, all kinds of activity, either lateral traffic or the north-south traffic going out to different locations. Got to monitor that traffic as well. And no one is really a full on-prem shop anymore. You're gonna have some type of cloud solutions, even if that's O365 or G Suite. We need to get those monitored as well if they're not, and integrating into a SIEM is strongly recommended. Email, you probably have some type of content or DNS filtering and hopefully SPF and DMARC on your email for additional security. And a SIEM, we do recommend a managed one, but there should be some kind of SIEM regardless to aggregate all that data. And on top of that, just having a SIEM isn't enough. There needs to be continuous rule development that keeps up with all the latest threats on the digital landscape, tapping into intelligence sources like NIST, MITRE, or CISA. And a SOAR, additionally, for autonomous response. Firewalls, and you probably have a endpoint firewall, typically a Windows firewall, or with inter-VLAN rules. That way, traffic that shouldn't talk to any other networks is not able to get there. And you have your perimeter firewall as well. And vulnerability scanning, definitely very important. We personally we implement Qualys with that, but we found that one to be the best. But internal and external scanners, we recommend checking both. You want to check your outer perimeter as well as what's going on inside and remediating those vulnerabilities. And ideally, MFA implemented wherever possible. So most people probably have it on their email, or at least hopefully. But if you can get that on the endpoints as well, that is ideal. All right, so those are the more obvious ones, but let's take a look at some more strategies that are a bit overlooked compared to the others. Breach and attack simulation for testing specific vectors in your environment. Honeypots and Canaries, this lures attackers away from your most critical assets, such as your SIS if you self-host it, or your domain controller. Incident response planning, this ensures you have a solid plan in place in the event defenses somehow fail, you have a plan to hit the ground running. Security awareness training, we really can't stress the importance of this enough to reduce your attack surface. The human element is important to take into consideration, and we'll touch more on this as we go through the presentation. And immutable backup, which ensures you can always recover your data from encryption events. So we'll begin with breach and attack simulation tools. And you may have a EDR, firewalls, antivirus. That's great, you absolutely should, but are they doing their job? This is something that BAS tools very much help with. They check and make sure that your security solutions that you're expecting to perform a specific task are actually doing that task and protecting you the way that they're advertised. there's tons of new threats that come on the digital landscape every single day, new EDR evasion tactics, things like that. So absolutely critical to stay ahead of the threat and make sure that the tools are doing their job and are executing the tasks that you think they're doing. And so there's various approaches, BAS tool solutions, but at minimum, it should be able to protect you against things like credential dumping through LSAS, no malicious file tools or downloads, or malicious PowerShell scripts, curb roasting, issuing golden tickets, or ESENT util. And I just want to mention that implementing security solutions doesn't mean that you're protected. Testing your security solutions against attacks means you're protected. And honeypots and canaries, very often overlooked. And we'll start with a brief definition here to kind of break up these terms a little bit. What is the difference between a honeypot and a canary? So a honeypot is the part of it that emulates a typical system, or a typical system that would be an environment. So you can spoof all kinds of things, whether it's RDP or IIS or even an OWA portal. And that's going to ideally lure the attacker, making it an attractive target so that they don't go toward your most critical asset, they go toward that honeypot. But the canary portion, we use Thanks to Canary for that. We have a partnership with them, and they basically, what that's going to do, the canary is the portion that actually alerts you and lets you know that the honeypot was interacted with in some way. And that way you're aware that there has actually been a breach. You can think of that as the canary singing or chirping. A good honeypot solution will integrate both of these components in one. That way you don't have to do two different implementations and bridge those together. And we do strongly recommend having one honeypot or canary deployed per VLAN. That way you have full coverage no matter where the attacker breaches. If they do some kind of discovery scan, then that whatever canary is there will pick that up and alert. Incident response planning, absolutely critical. This is a example of one that we did for San Marino Unified School District. They allowed us to share this, which is very nice. And so really the point of this is, in the event that your security solutions somehow fail and there has been some sort of breach, you don't want to be trying to figure out what to do, who to contact as this is happening and running around panicking. Having a cohesive incident response plan in place where if something detrimental happens, you can refer to that piece of paper and go through the motions that you need to go through to contain that as much as possible and reduce the damage. And security awareness training, definitely want to harp on this quite a bit. We partner with Cyber Ready for that. And really the human element is just very important to keep in mind, especially when it comes to social engineering attacks. It's not always that there's going to be some highly technical way of breaching the environment. Oftentimes it is still social engineering. So the more users that are educated and know the red flags to look out for, phishing scams, things like that, the more protected overall you're going to be. Because the reality is, the larger your organization is, the more holes you have. Each user, unfortunately, has to be thought of as kind of a weakness in the organization, because any one of those could inadvertently let an attacker in. So by training users, you're reducing your attack surface that way, in addition to all these security solutions that are being implemented and protecting you in a holistic fashion. And security awareness training, it used to be kind of droll and dry, to be honest. It really has come a long way. It's far more engaging, and it's a lot more welcoming for users of all skill levels to hop in and protect themselves, not only while they're in your environment, but in their personal life as well. And immutable backup, this one is unfortunately ignored quite a bit. Most are probably aware of the 3-2-1 rule, keeping 3 backup copies with two on 2 different devices and 1 that is off-site. But one thing that this doesn't actually account for is immutable backups. Backups that are essentially written in stone is how you can think of it. Kind of like when you burn a CD, you're writing to it once and then reading to it thereafter. This is why it's called worm storage, write once, read many. And so just to kind of give a practical example here, let's say that any town, unified school district, they suffer some kind of breach. Their primary backups, their local backups rather, get encrypted, and their normal cloud backups get encrypted as well, via something like Lockbit, for instance. And if they had implemented worm storage, they're still able to recover, because those backups, even if the attacker were to somehow get access to those, they can't actually modify it. Once they're written, they can't be modified. So it's a very good strategy to implement. That way, no matter what happens, you can always at least recover your data. And so for immutable blob storage, Amazon S3 or Azure or Wasabi, those are just some examples of providers where you can implement that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And yeah, so we always try to keep these short on the first run through here, but that's what Q&A is for. So if you have any questions, if you want to dive in or want to know a little bit more on any of these topics, submit your questions using the Q&A tool. And yeah, hope we inspired some of the folks on the call here to implement some of these things. And as you tackle those, maybe in the future, in the next few days or weeks, always feel free to reach out to Jeff if you have any questions at that time. But while we give you a minute to submit your questions on Q&A, let me tell you briefly about Securus 360, who we are, what we do. We are a company 100% focused on working with K-12 school districts, and we offer managed extended detection and response services, MXDR. And I'll just run through a real quick overview just to, it's one of the most comprehensive solutions in the space. And we offer multi-vector monitoring, so true MXDR, meaning we go way beyond your endpoints. We look at servers and cloud applications, SaaS applications, your cybersecurity devices, user behavior, all of these things. Includes managed EDR, managed SIEM. Key part is the 24/7, 365 SOC, meaning we have a team of security analysts that continuously pore over the data from your environment, and then when they see something, they investigate, verify these threats, and then work with the client on remediation. They offer guided or autonomous remediation, after hours available or 24/7. They active threat hunting. They do that as well as we leverage AI, machine learning algorithms, hundreds of them, looking for anomalies and potential indicators of compromise in behavior patterns and things like that. Vulnerability assessments, critical. Jeff mentioned it briefly in the beginning. That's a key part we do with all of our clients, and depending on the size of the school district, sometimes we find thousands, and you heard that right, thousands of critical vulnerabilities that then we help prioritize and remediate. And we also offer a cyber warranty, which is kind of a different angle because it offers financial protection, which goes a long way. So just wanted to give you a quick idea of what we do, and we did get some questions. Great, keep them coming. Question number 1. is it's about BAS tools. How do BAS tools compare to traditional pen testing?
So with traditional pen testing, you usually have some kind of company come out. They'll go on site, and you have to open up a lot of stuff to kind of let them in typically. And there's a couple problems with that. For one, there are certainly cases where when that was done, the hole that they opened up may not always be closed back up, which is a big problem. It depends on the BAS tool solution, but often and ideally, you don't need to open any holes in your network if they leverage some type of dissolvable agent. The other thing is it's generally cheaper than the traditional on-site pen testing. A few other advantages there that I can think of off the top of my head here. It's going to be a lot faster to get you the results. With the runtime simulations that run, a report is generated. Whereas if you have some company come out, they're going to have to typically cobble that report together, which can take a while. So you get your results faster, and it's generally cheaper than the alternative.
Okay. And then the next question, one more here. Can I customize the honeypot to make it look like a school environment?
So we actually do that for you. So we have we created a K-12 specific honeypot canary template. It's going to make it look very much like a typical system that you would find in a K-12 environment. So there's a lot of strategy involved when it comes to the honeypots and canaries, because you want to strike a balance. You don't really want for lack of a better term, a Christmas tree lit up with every single service listening. If the attacker comes across that, they're going to say, well, that's obviously a honeypot, and then they're just going to sideline it. So we put a lot of thought into catering that, making it look like a very enticing target, but not too enticing such that the attacker will avoid it. So simple answer, we take care of that for you.
Yeah, that was a good question. I was wondering myself. More questions coming in. How often do you recommend testing IRP protocols?
So at a minimum every 6 months. If people want to do it more often, they can, but at least biannually.
Okay. And then, last question. Feel free to shoot more questions or follow-up questions if you feel the original question wasn't answered completely, which is always tough. But last question for now, will immutable backups help protect me against data exfiltration?
Ooh, I'm really glad that was asked, because to be really frank, no, they will not protect against that. That would fall more toward possibly your IPS would get that, or maybe maybe the EDR. But immutable backups are really more for encryption-based events. So, because there's really a couple main threats you got to look out for. One is the encryption, the other is exfiltration. So the encryption, immutable backups will at least allow you to get your data back. If the data has already been exfiltrated, then it's not going to prevent that, and it's not going to somehow get it away from the attackers, of course. So it is a encryption-based protection. Data exfiltration will fall toward other solutions that will mitigate that.
Okay. All right, those were great questions. Thank you very much. And thanks, Jeff. The last quick housekeeping note, we do these events here every couple of months, and the next one coming up in July 25th We'll be talking about disaster recovery strategy and planning. As Jeff mentioned earlier, this disaster recovery, including backups, immutable backups, key component of your cybersecurity landscape. And we're doing this with our good partners over at Paragon Software. They are a backup and disaster recovery specialist. Thank you. With that, we'll wrap it up. I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of your busy days. We really loved connecting with you. Let Jeff know if you have any questions about any of the technologies, the tools we discussed today, or about any of our solutions. Jeff loves talking to our customers and prospects, and myself. If you have any questions, I'm always here. Feel free to reach out. Happy to answer questions you guys might have. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.